Good morning, everyone. Welcome again to our next exciting installment of long-term athletic development. Particularly this week, we're looking at training to train stage. Apologies for a little bit late again, the joys of winter and school-aged children. Okay, today we'll just get right into it. We'll share the screen. Where are we up to? I'm hoping this is the one we want. All right. So again, we're looking at training to train stage. And if we look at the general characteristics, we're looking at early teenagers, early onset of adolescence. We've got investment years, specialising years, and we're looking about the stage we bring about a high level of deliberate practice as opposed to playing for fun and games and that sort of thing. So practice outweighs the level of deliberate play, especially in investment years. And they start focusing on their one sport. The same thing if they're specialising, deliberate play and practice is balanced, whereas the reduced involvement in several sports. So if you're looking at the recreational type capacity, that's sort of where they're looking at. Investment years, you start looking at they're developing or looking to develop for a high level performance once they move into training to compete stage, which will be next. If we have a look at the overview of it, a critical stage ratio of training equipment needs to be periodised for basic skills, fitness and long-term growth. We're also looking at focus on attaining higher levels of performance and determine what constitutes a healthy training and competition environment for this group. So then the main things that we're going to consider and what we're looking at to do. So our development, skeletal maturation continues both with males and females. Their height and their growth spurt, it's actually starting to decelerate. So they've had their major growth spurt, and now that's starting to slow down as they reach what will probably become their maximal height. Their respiratory system or cardiovascular system and respiratory has reached maturity. So then we can start maximum output, and we can start really developing aerobic base and endurance based events. By 17, girls have generally reached what would be their genetic height, whereas the boys, several years later, probably usually it's very much early 20s. Also, I guess one of the things, especially if you're working with female athletes at this age, is the girls will gain more weight. Now, the concept of body image and that is very strong in this age group. So if you are dealing with females in this age group, you have to be aware of negative aspects that can generate through society, social media, and just public perception in dealing with issues that may come up. Now, if we look at where they're on our peak height graph, as you can see, they're in this teen. So this is where their growth spurt comes about. Again, the boys generally hit a little bit later. But again, with both of them, both speed, stamina, and strength, stamina and speed is their main focus. And with the guys, generally a little bit later, they'll start to focus on strength. But we can start introducing more resistance-based opportunities rather than just body weight, if their sports requires it. But the main thing that we're looking at is their window to develop speed and stamina. Their development, mental and cognitive, has reached its adult side, but it's still developing its neurological pathways, and that won't end until probably, well, you could say if they're a male, they're probably not ending for a long time, but generally would say that they still continue to mature for several more years. Critical thinking is more developed now that they've reached this age group. So we need, as a coach, to start applying critical thinking to their training. Self-assessment, correction of mistakes, peer evaluation, that sort of thing is an opportune time to start helping them develop critical thinking. I guess you'd also look to apply more game strategy and having their more involvement, more input into game strategy. So in other words, looking at why something occurred and how to prevent it or develop or learn from it, rather than just, guys, bad luck, you lost today. So we're looking at more critical analysis and developing that skill for them. Peer group is still powerful. independent and leadership skills are becoming more developed. So at this stage, I guess those who are natural born leaders will start showing themselves. They're still going to be subjective to peer group. Performers are searching for a stable, balanced self-image. Self-esteem is still susceptible to success and failure, so they're still going to base their self-worth based on their overall performance. Of course, at this stage, they learn the benefits of the opposite sex, and that's not necessarily a good or a bad thing. It's just something you need to be aware of, but also helping them to develop coping techniques, developing how to deal with failure, how to deal with success, how to deal with conflict, and all those sorts of things are all opportunities that they can start to come in at this place as they develop emotionally. Our KPIs that we look at, they're looking at 2 to 3 times a week at this stage, probably 30-minute sessions. So we're still looking at a general introduction to resistance training. Most of the training prior to this would have been body weight type exercises. Now we might actually get them into a gym environment or start doing more structured training, but it's still not a massive volume of training. Olympic lifting techniques with light bars can be introduced with the onset of their peak height velocity. So we can even start looking and teaching the complex movements as well. Flexibility should be monitored, static and PNF. Isolated stretching or dynamic stretching, again, this is when their elasticity starts to, from youth, is starting to gradually decrease. So we would like to bring in some flexibility, whether it be static or compromised or complemented with PNF or proprioceptive neuromuscular facilitation. Biological maturation rather than chronological age. So in other words, we can look at where they're developed biologically, so their cardiovascular or cardiorespiratory system, and how that has functioned. If it's fully developed, then their capacity for endurance and stamina is enhanced, so they can be trained harder than that. We're sort of looking at the neural pathways that are established, so therefore an opportunity to increase or work on speed again becomes highly relevant. Anaerobic power and capacity gradually introduced. Again, girls first, then we bring it in later in the age group for boys. Again, you still want to make this fun because anyone who's done this type of training knows how tough it is, and we're not about destroying the kids, and we're about encouraging them and motivating them. So again, if you have high performance athletes, then they're more open to this sort of training. So we're still going to apply it to the recreational athletes, but you need to bring about it into ways that will encourage them to continue participation. And we start looking at intensity, frequency, duration to ensure it. So again, we want to start introducing them to structured training, but be aware of volume and intensity, make sure we periodise that training. And again, it's going to base on more of a person's biological development rather than their chronological. So if someone is older via the calendar, but their biology hasn't matured to the extent, then we have to take that into consideration when we train. During training, they've got to rehydrate every 20, 30 minutes. At this stage, they become more able to self-regulate their thirst. After training, post-games drinks. So we're looking at rehydration, restoration of glycogen stores, a bit of stretching, relaxation, progressive muscle relaxation, visualization, a lot of active recovery and stretching sessions. So we're starting to bring into them more of a, especially we're looking primarily here, we're looking at those who are developing into high performance academies, moving, taking that next step up, starting to bring into them the basic consideration that our full-time elite athlete goes through each week. So we're bringing into them having a holistic approach to their entire well-being for training. So not just the training part, but maintenance of hydration and looking after themselves in recovery sessions, whether they do active recovery, stretching, aquatherapy, but also hydration and glycogen replenishment. So we're bringing them those. Now, as coaches, we've got our 4 C's. Competence, equal amounts of deliberate practice and deliberate play at this point in time for the guys. Deliberate practice tasks, well-defined and repetitive, appropriate level of difficulty. And once they've mastered that, then we start increasing the complexity. And when we do have deliberate play, it is more about a structured game rather than just a free-for-all that we had in the earlier stages. Practice a well-defined, repetitive, appropriate level. So this is where you may have to, if you do have a squad of players, actually start breaking it up where we're basic components with high level, and actually start splitting them up to enhance the skill of those who skills are lower, but also ensure that those of a higher skill are still improving their ability. So again, we start looking at the 10,000 hours or the 10 years of deliberate practice. Again, remember that 10,000 hours is not just 10,000 hours associated with one sport, but it's 10,000 hours of development of the skills associated with the sport. So sometimes people think we need to do 10,000 hours in the one sport. But in those sampling years, you can develop a lot of skills that can cross over sports. Athlete well-being in terms of enjoyment, injury, and burnout. Look, high school, at the end of high school, especially when there's so much peer group pressure and what to do, as opposed to those who are highly developing into elite levels, they're going to have a lot of things that are going to come against them. We have to ensure there's a balance. I know rugby had invited the top 20 odd props to a elite level training camp. The following year, they invited they had 23 turn up. The following year, they invited those props back again for another camp. Only 3 actually returned. They found the others had all dropped out. And a lot of it stated that they were burnt out over training because of how many training sessions they were doing based on rugby. And these are ones in junior development academies. So we have to be aware of that and look out for burnout, especially if at 18 you've been doing the one thing for 10 years. You suffer an injury and all of a sudden you get to experience the brighter side of life. So our confidence associated with self-perceptions, athletic competence, appearance and self-worth, and also confidence from other areas that can cross over. We still need to have deliberate play, but in this case, deliberate play will be interactive and bringing in about the skills that they're focusing on to actually put them in a game-based situation. Sport-specific skills increase creativity, enjoyment, analysts and athletes to build their confidence and social skills. Because despite their overall confidence, a lot of teenagers specifically struggle with that public speaking. They might be pretty good within their own little circle, but take them out of that comfort zone, and they may struggle. So this enhances that development by providing them with opportunities to enhance those social skills. Fostered through the appropriate modelling, mentoring of coaches. So coaches have a very strong situation to connect and develop that athlete. So again, a strong, helpful mentoring coach will help that athlete, whereas a negative coach could actually turn these athletes off their sport. So we need to have a really strong relationship. Peers, again, are still having an influence. And not just peers, there might be that elite level academy, but then outside of that academy, when they're in their normal school or their friends that they've grown up with, that's going to have an influence on them as well. So you need to ensure that that balance is maintained. May facilitate character development, positive values, resilience, optimism, good work ethic has all been shown, especially in sport in particular. Also teaches you a lot of things that you can cross over to sport that we discussed in the earlier stages. The most obvious is that if you commit a foul, you are penalised. So you learn very quickly if you break the rules, there is a consequence for your actions. So it's probably the strongest thing that we can foster out of young athletes. And so here we come down, Olympic athletes, when they go back, that these sorts of things of values, resilience, optimism, and their work ethic are all developed in this stage. So that's something that we really need to focus on and help these guys develop. So quantities of deliberate practice increases, deliberate play, but it's very much skill associated deliberate play. We need to include the play. All practice, no play makes Johnny a dull boy, that old adage or old wives' tale from your grandmother. Still sampling in terms, but in this case it may be more positional rather than different sports. So they've eliminated the multiple sports that they possibly played and now focusing on one. But in that instance, you might get to sample other areas within the position, such as in your football. They can play in the forwards, in the backs, in the midfield. Develop the skills, but also gives them a greater awareness of the roles and responsibilities that those positions have played. So it allows them to foster and develop that understanding. We also need particularly psychological training and mental skills, and also social interaction. All these still continue to play an important role in these kids. Okay, guys, and there's your references. Have a look, read up on them, as I can know that you're all doing thoroughly. And so that's what we come with training to train. So if we have a look at it compared to the previous ones, we are starting to look more in the fact that with these guys, they're focusing and starting to fine-tune those skills as they develop through to high performance or elite performance junior academy selections. Those that aren't there will continue to participate in sport and recreation. And if we can maintain that, we can continue their activity for across the lifespan, really. So again, it's still about specialising into the sport, still deliberate practice, deliberate play, but focusing more on the one sport rather than generalised sports. Their cardiovascular system's fully developed, so we can start really developing their stamina and endurance. Although the central nervous system has grown, it's still maturing, but we can still also develop their speed, their second window of speed training, and we should really focus on developing that at this stage. All right, guys, training to train. Next week we'll go on to training to compete, which is our first level of high performance. Remember, get your videos in of your mental blank. I only had one coffee, my apologies. Get the videos in of your 20 minutes of your training plan. Again, if your plan is 2 hours, if you're doing an elite level group and your training plan is 2 hours, you only have to provide 20 minutes and just select a 20-minute block from it. And again, if it's an hour, again, 20 minutes. And you can pick any part of the 20 minutes just to show an understanding of what the age group was. Now, be aware that if you are, say, doing a training to win stage, but you have recreational athletes, I understand that their skill level may not be, as long as you can give the appearance that the structure of the program is suitable for that training to win. If you're doing a rugby league and you've got a number of Gumbies who can't even catch and pass, that's quite all right. You'll get the drill, you'll explain it, and you'll run it. And instead of stopping and explaining it, you'll give this constant encouragement and motivation. Okay. Anyhow, well, good luck with that. Let me know if you've got any problems, guys, and I'll see you next week. Thanks again.